Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Mioch and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. A federal appeals court temporarily reinstates Donald Trump's tariffs a day after they were blocked by a U.S. trade court. White House says Israel agreed to a Gaza ceasefire proposal. Hamas says it's reviewing the plan. Azerbaijan elected to the executive board of the UN Habitat Program at the body's assembly in Nairobi. Thank you for tuning in. A federal appeals court temporarily reinstated the most sweeping of Donald Trump's tariffs a day after a U.S. trade court ruled that the president had exceeded his authority in imposing the duties and ordered an immediate block on them.
A federal appeals court temporarily reinstated the most sweeping of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Thursday. This came just one day after a U.S. trade court ruled that the president had overstepped his authority and ordered an immediate halt to the tax hikes. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit in Washington, D.C. said it was pausing the lower court's ruling while it considers the government's appeal. It gave the plaintiffs until the 5th of June to respond, and the administration must file its reply by the 9th of June. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro insists the administration is prepared to act on multiple fronts if needed. For now, the tariffs remain in place.
There's no plan B, it's plan A, okay? Plan A encompasses all strategic options, and when we move forward, we had a full view of what the battlefield looks like. We are not naive about rogue justices in the judiciary.
Thank you very much.
The trade court had earlier ruled that Trump went beyond his powers by using emergency law to impose broad tariffs, stating that only Congress has the authority to set duties. Despite the ruling, the White House is standing its ground. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called the decision judicial overreach and said the Supreme Court must back the president. Trump also warned that judgment, if upheld, would weaken presidential power. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said trade negotiations are continuing, with no signs that America's trading partners are backing away.
We have not seen any of that in terms of our trading partners. They are coming to us in good faith and trying to complete the deals before the 90-day pause ends. So we've seen no change in their attitude in the past 48 hours. As a matter of fact, I have a very large Japanese delegation coming to my office first thing tomorrow morning.
White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett also highlighted progress continues on several trade deals despite the court's ruling.
I saw last week, at the end of the week, 3 that were basically ready for the president's decision. I don't know if people have had that conversation with him yet, but yes, there are many, many deals coming, and there were 3 that are basically look like they're done.
Trump's tariff strategy has shaken financial markets for months. On Thursday, U.S. stocks closed slightly higher as investors reacted to both the court news and corporate earnings. The S&P 500, NASDAQ and Dow all posted modest gains. Analysts say uncertainty remains. With the Court of Appeals now reviewing the case, both sides are preparing to make their arguments. For now, Trump's tariffs stay in place. U.S. stocks ended slightly higher on Thursday, while investors digested the late afternoon court ruling.
As legal battles over Donald Trump's global tariff impositions continue, the effect of Washington's trade policies is best felt at the port of Los Angeles, the busiest port in the country. The number of ships has dropped sharply due to high tariffs on Chinese goods and legal uncertainty, according to port officials.
The head of the busiest port in the United States, the Port of Los Angeles, says that uncertainty among importers is increasing. The reason, President Donald Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods and the ongoing legal disputes surrounding them. According to the director of the port, Gene Soroka, says this situation is negatively affecting preparations for the holiday season. It's after the U.S. Court of International Trade tried to block the tariffs this week. However, the Federal Appeals Court has temporarily reinstated them. The port's director says that imports of goods for the back-to-school period and the holiday season have decreased. In May, cargo volume dropped significantly compared to the same period last year, with some weeks seeing a 30% decline. 10 vessel arrivals scheduled for June have been cancelled, 5 of which were planned for the first week of the month. The port of Los Angeles is a key entry point for goods from China, and major companies such as Walmart and Ford rely on it. Last month, Trump imposed a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, halting many shipments to the US. Due to shipping delays, the impact on cargo volume was felt 2 to 3 weeks later. Even though the US and China agreed earlier this month to temporarily reduce tariffs to 30%, the situation remains unstable. The Federal Appeals Court says the plaintiffs in the legal challenge can respond by the 5th of June and the Trump administration by the 9th of June, suggesting that uncertainty will likely continue in the coming days.
Elon Musk has officially stepped down from his role as top advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump. He spearheaded the Trump administration's efforts to slash the federal government and spending. On the exit and what it could bring to the Trump 2.0 team, we're talking with political analyst Diogo Castro Silva, coming to us from Sao Paulo. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, ahead of his departure, Musk criticized Trump's so-called big and beautiful tax and spending bill, saying he's disappointed as he felt it undermined the work he did on reducing the spending. The slashes that his Dodge team proposed and implemented have been felt not only through the federal government, but also throughout the world, as most of the foreign aid was stopped. What was left of U.S. aid was integrated into the State Department. What kind of a legacy would you say Trump's idea with employing Musk leaves?
Well, I think you have to see in two forms, one of substance and one of form. The one of form, this was a performance, this was ideological performance, because the cuts were more impactful psychologically than in actual dollars slashed from the budget. In fact, the programs targeted, like the international aid and other departments, were very small as a percentage of total US government spending. So what you were doing is using Elon Musk as a driver to make ideological cuts and in a way to traumatize, if you want, the federal workforce that was considered an enemy of the government. Because like I said, in substance, the legacy is very small, because if you take into account that the programs that really spend money, Medicaid, defense, that constitute, and others that constitute the bulk of the federal government spending, they were not touched by Doge. Now, at the level of the budget, there seems to be a willingness, at least from the House of Representatives, to do so. But the efforts look a lot without planning, and that was also the main issue with Elon Musk. It was a question of public performance rather than a studied and planned affair. But in a way, it, like I said, it fulfilled one of the objectives of Trump, was to use Musk as a shield to do certain actions. And in that narrow sense, that was successful. But I think the legacy will be very negative over the long term.
Well, when it comes to the public appearances, there were numerous controversies surrounding Musk, from his open support to the far-right AfD ahead of the German election, his attacks on the UK government, to his claims of a genocide committed on white people in South Africa, and so on. According to some U.S. media reports, there have been cabinet members opposing his moves and ideas, but none of that was on record. How do you see such a high-profile exit impacting the team that Trump gathered for his second term?
Well, I think in a way it's not. I mean, in the first mandate, you had Steve Bannon that also left, I think, at around this time, the government. So by itself, the exit is not surprising. The question is, you really don't have a cabinet with autonomous, like in the first mandate of Trump, you had a cabinet with people that had their own reputations, their own professional background and long-time service, like Jim Mattis on defense, Ryan Tillerson on state. So people that had a professional background that had them be autonomous in their own decision-making from the simple direction of the president. This cabinet, you have a total submission to the president. So in fact, it's not a cabinet, it's more similar to a court of a king, which different courtiers dispute for power and for favor of the king. Some of them will lose, some of them will win, but that's the game. And I think at this juncture, Elon Musk, at the game of the chairs, was the time to leave.
Well, Diogo, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight.
Thank you.
Sticking with the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled that the Trump administration can temporarily revoke the legal status of more than 500,000 migrants from Central and South American countries. The decision holds a lower court's order that had blocked the termination of the humanitarian parole program, which was established under the Biden administration to protect migrants fleeing crises. The ruling is set to affect over 500,000 people, primarily from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, who are allowed to stay in the U.S. for humanitarian reasons. The White House says Israel has accepted a U.S.-backed 60-day Gaza ceasefire plan. Israel has not yet officially commented, while Hamas says they are reviewing the proposal and that the plan does not meet their demands. The deal calls for the release of 28 Israeli hostages in exchange for 1,236 Palestinian prisoners and the remains of 180 dead Palestinians. The plan also stipulates that Hamas release the last 30 of the 58 remaining hostages once a permanent ceasefire has been arranged. Hamas says the plan lacks commitments to end the war, withdraw troops, and unblock aid. Israel insists that Hamas must disarm and release hostages before peace can be achieved.
I can confirm that Special Envoy Witkoff and the president submitted a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that Israel backed and supported. Israel signed off on this proposal before it was sent to Hamas. I can also confirm that those discussions are continuing, and we hope that a ceasefire in Gaza will take place so we can return all of the hostages home, and that's been a priority from this administration from the beginning. I won't comment further as we are in the midst of this right now.
So to be clear, you don't know if Hamas has accepted it yet?
Not to my knowledge, but certainly if that becomes case and this ceasefire goes into effect, you'll hear it directly from myself, the president, or Special Envoy Witkoff.
Meanwhile, Israeli protesters gathered at the Kerem Shalom border crossing in attempts to stop aid trucks from going into Gaza. The UN stated it has not been able to collect aid from the crossing for the past 3 days.
Israeli protesters have gathered near the Kerem Shalom border crossing in an attempt to block trucks carrying humanitarian aid into Gaza. The protesters say they want the release of all Israeli hostages held in Gaza before any aid can be allowed to pass.
All the humanitarian that goes to the Hamas needs to be stopped because they need to release our hostages. Release our hostages, you will get your humanitarian. We have to seal the deal.
The war will end when Hamas is not in power in Gaza and when we have our hostages back. We already said this many times, like if Hamas wants the war in Gaza to end, they need to give our hostages back. There's no other way.
These protests come as the United States has proposed a 60-day ceasefire plan that includes sending humanitarian aid to Gaza. The plan will also see the release of 28 Israeli hostages, alive and dead, in the first week, in exchange for the release of 1,236 Palestinian prisoners and the remains of 180 Palestinians. Israel has accepted the deal presented by US envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, while Hamas says it's undertaking a thorough review of the proposal, but added that it fails to meet the demands of the Palestinian people.
The US has told the United Nations Security Council that its ceasefire plan for Ukraine is Russia's best possible deal and urges Moscow to accept it. The US warned that if Russia continues the war, Washington may step back from negotiations and consider more sanctions. The American proposal calls for an immediate, unconditional 30-day ceasefire that Kyiv had earlier accepted. The White House says US President Donald Trump encourages the direct Russia-Ukraine talks in Istanbul.
And the president has been clear from the very beginning of this conflict that he wants to see this conflict solved on the negotiating table, not on the battlefield. And he's told that to both leaders, again, both publicly and privately. So hopefully next week it will move the ball forward in this.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has not delivered a promised memorandum outlining a potential ceasefire deal. Despite assurances after Russian President Vladimir Putin's call with US President Donald Trump on May 19th, Ukraine, its allies, and the mediator, Turkey, say they have not received the document. Kyiv says it submitted its proposal earlier this week and urged Moscow to present its version before the next proposed meeting on Monday in Istanbul. Zelensky says Moscow is stalling to undermine the process and avoid accountability.
Even the so-called memorandum they promised and seemingly prepared for more than a week has still not been seen by anyone. Ukraine didn't get it. Our partners didn't get it. Even Turkey, which was hosting the first meeting, didn't get the new agenda. Despite promises to the contrary, and first of all promises to the United States of America, to President Trump. Another Russian deceit.
Ahead of the proposed second round of direct Moscow-Kyiv peace negotiations in Istanbul, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has been shuttling between the two capitals, aiming to lay the groundwork for the talks.
Turkey is actively working to mediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. On a visit to Kyiv, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan expressed hope that the two sides will make significant progress on technical issues during their next round of talks, potentially paving the way for a leaders' summit. He said Ankara would like to host the summit with both Turkish and US presidents present. The Istanbul talks on May 16th, which marked the first direct contact between Moscow and Kyiv in 3 years, were described by Fidan as a new beginning. He believes further negotiations are possible.
The talks held in Istanbul on the 16th of May added a new dimension to the search for a diplomatic solution. Expectations for a ceasefire and peace have increased. We consider the Istanbul talks as a new beginning. The rapid completion of the prisoner swap agreement reached in Istanbul has proven that negotiations can yield concrete results. We want the momentum gained in Istanbul to continue.
However, Ukraine remains cautious. Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that Kyiv is still waiting to receive a formal document outlining Russia's peace proposals before deciding whether to attend the next meeting, scheduled for June 2nd in Istanbul. Sybiha did not clarify what steps Ukraine would take if the document is not received.
We are interested in these meetings continuing because we want to end this war this year, and we are interested in establishing a ceasefire, whether it is for 30 days, or for 50 days, or for 100 days. Ukraine is open to discussing this directly with Russia. We confirmed this during the last meeting of our delegations with the Russian side.
The Kremlin has confirmed its negotiators will travel to Istanbul and be ready for talks on Monday. A list of conditions for a potential ceasefire is expected to be on the table.
Western and central Canada are battling a growing wildfire emergency. 2 provinces have declared a state of emergency as thousands were forced to flee their homes.
Canada's Saskatchewan province has declared a state of emergency on Thursday, as the province faces a critical wildfire threat. According to Premier Scott Moe, there are currently 17 active wildfires, with 15 communities already evacuated.
It's a very serious situation that we're faced with in Saskatchewan. We do need some rainfall. We need that sooner rather than later. And in light of that not being in the forecast, we most certainly are putting in place every measure possible to prepare our province, prepare our communities, and prepare those that live in our northern communities that are threatened by these wildfires in the days ahead.
On Wednesday, the neighbouring province of Manitoba also declared a state of emergency, urging thousands of residents in northern and eastern regions to evacuate their homes as wildfires spread rapidly. Nationwide, more than 166 wildfires are currently active, with 84 classified as out of control, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. The most severe fires are concentrated in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, Ontario, and British Columbia. In response, the Canadian Armed Forces have been deployed to Manitoba to assist with evacuation and firefighting operations. As smoke from the fires continues to drift south, officials warn of worsening air quality in parts of the United States. Emergency crews remain on high alert as the situation evolves under persistently dry and windy conditions.
A glacier has collapsed in southern Switzerland, burying most of the village of Blatten. 1 person remains missing as officials have paused the search due to dangerous conditions.
The search for a missing man in the Swiss village of Blatten has been suspended after a massive flow of ice, rock and mud collapsed from the Birch Glacier on Wednesday, burying much of the settlement. Authorities say unstable debris mounds and the risk of further rockfalls have made it too dangerous for rescue teams to continue working on the ground. Blatten's 300 residents had already been evacuated from their homes earlier in May, when part of the mountain above showed signs of instability. But the landslide that followed covered nearly the entire area. Some of the few buildings left standing were later flooded as water from a blocked river began to rise. The collapse left a visible scar down the Klein's Nesthorn mountain. The River Lonza, which flows through the area, has been clogged with debris nearly 2 kilometres wide, causing a lake to form. Officials report that the water level has been rising by up to 80 centimetres per hour, driven by both the river blockage and ongoing glacial melt. The army has deployed personnel and equipment, including helicopters and water pumps, while livestock is being airlifted out of nearby farms. Residents in neighbouring villages such as Gampel and Steeg have been told to prepare for potential evacuation if conditions worsen. Scientists monitoring the Alps say this type of event aligns with ongoing changes in the region. Glaciers are melting faster and permafrost, which helps bind mountain rock, is thawing. That combination is making slopes more unstable, especially in summer months. While experts caution against drawing conclusions too quickly, many say climate change is contributing to the increase in such high-altitude hazards. Swiss authorities are already considering further protective measures as the warming trend continues.
For sure whether climate change was the main driver of this event, because we would need to know for certain whether this event would have happened in a reality that doesn't have any climate change, and we don't have that parallel reality really. And what we know is that climate change at high elevations is not favorable for rock slope stability. So with increasing temperatures, more water available through ice and snow melt, maybe precipitation falling even high elevations more often as rain than as snow. So those are factors that are not beneficial to mountain stability.
The Swiss president is expected to visit the site soon. Local leaders have pledged support for displaced residents, but with much of the village now buried or flooded, it's unclear when or if people will be able to return.
Azerbaijan has been elected a member of UN Habitat Program's Executive Board for the next 4 years at the body's assembly in Nairobi. The board plays a central role in guiding UN Habitat's work on sustainable urban development. Azerbaijan's involvement with the agency has grown since hosting the World Habitat Day in 2023. The country is also preparing to host the UN World Urban Forum in 2026. Joining us to talk on Azerbaijan's election and the upcoming World Urban Forum is Murad Muradov of the Topchubashov Center in Baku. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. Let's start with Azerbaijan's election to the 4-year term in the UN's body. How much would you say this amplifies Baku's already strong role in global decision-making and issue-solving bodies?
Well, I think this development is really important in terms of the contribution Azerbaijan can bring to the organization, given its specific experience in restoring of the cities. Because Azerbaijan experience, if I look at it, it combines two concepts. Because on one hand, we are restoring cities which have been striving for like centuries and have developed significant cultural and socio-economic networks. On the other hand, some of them, like Agdam, for example, have been turned to rubbish after the decades of occupation. So it's in fact at the same time restoring and building from scratch. So I think, like for UN Habitat, it will be a new experience because, for example, if you look at the city development programs, they usually target either destroyed cities like those in Iraq or Afghanistan or other war-torn countries, or they just deal with the improvement of social or like hygienic economic infrastructure, let's say in the overpopulated and poverty-ridden cities in the global south, or even, let's say, some cities in the developed countries like Barcelona. So in this sense, I think Azerbaijan experience will be quite unique, and it will be like more like proper experience exchange rather than just basically copying and emulating UN experience.
Well, you spoke on the Azerbaijani experience being shared with the world ahead of the World Urban Forum next year. How much can Azerbaijan benefit from the other experiences globally when it comes to its own rebuilding efforts in the liberated territories?
First of all, I think it is a matter of balance because yeah, as I said, so Azerbaijan faces actually a colossal challenge, and in order to invest with maximum possible efficiency, of course, we would like to have certain, say, blueprints from like global practice. Like, for example, if we take the work, like global habitat executed in some, let's say, developed parts of the say first world cities, like for example, let's say Paris and Barcelona. So for example, sometimes they will face challenges of trying to like renovate them without completely wiping off the historic patterns, something which makes all districts unique. But for example, these buildings which are architectural historic importance, they may have problems with providing adequate hygiene and like access to more, like 5G internet, or etc. So basically, carefully introducing them into the modern city fabric, just without completely destroying them. Yeah, it is a challenge. I think also, let's say, if you take smart cities, here, it will be important while, say, building them to provide adequate so-called infrastructure of daily life, so that they should be not only efficient, but also providing adequate leisure time, let's say, rest time, like adequate space and air to people who are moving there from Baku, because it will involve a complete change of daily life and of living standards. So it's important just to invest really carefully And also, I just one last point. I think this 15-minute city concept, which UN Habitat has been promoting all over the world, it has, I think, a very good prospects in Azerbaijan, because if you take Shusha or Agdam, which are now being renovated, and given their size and projected population, they're ideal for introducing a city which is not too large, so that we can basically walk all over them, and everything accessible by walk. On the other hand, they have everything a person needs. Not only in terms of physical infrastructure, but also education, culture, sports facilities. So I think, this will be it can be a really big step into the future for Azerbaijan as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
In other news, Baku and Ankara are in talks on a potential free trade agreement, according to Azerbaijan's first deputy economy minister Elnur Aliyev. Both sides are assessing its economic impact, and the proposed deal may cover goods from Azerbaijan's liberated territories. Turkey is Azerbaijan's second largest trade partner, with trade reaching $6.1 billion last year and $2 billion so far this year. Talks also aim to expand the list of goods under the current trade deal. The second edition of the Global Islamic Economy Summit kicked off in Istanbul. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called on Muslim-majority countries to boost trade, saying they make up only 11% of global trade, while being home to 25% of the world's population. He also spoke on the Turkish economy, saying that inflation has dropped for 11 straight months, vowing to bring it down to single digits. Tensions are mounting between Georgia and several European Union member states amid rising concerns over entry denials and treatment of foreign nationals. Recent travel advisories from France and Poland have warned their citizens about potential risks when visiting Georgia. Our Nini Nikolaishvili has more in Tbilisi.
Tensions rise between Georgia and some EU member states after the warnings from Polish embassy and the French Foreign Ministry urged their citizens to think twice before traveling to Georgia. Both statements cited growing numbers of EU nationals being denied entry, pointed to participation in the protest and even online activity as possible risk factor. The embassies also cautioned that foreigners found near the demonstrations may face hefty fines up to 5,000 lari and possible travel restrictions. Daily protests since late November, especially near the Parliament and Freedom Square, have triggered clash and detention, adding to foreign governments' concerns. But still, the Georgian government is pushing back. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze rejected these accusations, calling this warning incomprehensible and pointing to the statistics, saying that more than 33,000 foreign citizens entered to Georgia, while only a small amount of them were turned away. He compared that to Poland's refusal of 750 Georgians, insisting that numbers are speaking for themselves. The parliament speaker, Shavol Papashvili, went further, calling these warnings an attack on Georgia's economy. He argued that EU countries routinely deny farmer Georgians on their borders than Georgia does to EU citizens. As tourism season picks up, this diplomatic rift raises questions, not only about the border policy, but also about the political temperature between Georgia and some of its key European partners. It's Nini Nikolaishvili, reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
14 members of an alleged Armenian fraud ring have been arrested in Los Angeles under suspicion of stealing $30 million in COVID relief funds and small business loans. According to U.S. prosecutors, out of the 18 defendants named in the criminal complaints, 4 are believed to be in Armenia.
The exclusive Fox News report revealed that an Armenian crime ring stole $30 million in COVID relief and small business loans intended to help American taxpayers. Federal agents have arrested 14 suspects in connection with the scheme. 13 of them are Armenian-born. and at least one is expected to face deportation. One of the key figures is believed to be William McGrayan, who investigators say led the operation. He's accused of using fake tax and bank documents to create shell companies, applying for $47 million in federal funds and securing around $30 million. Court documents describe McGrayan as unstable, with alleged ties to Armenian gangs. An informant told authorities he once threatened someone with a gun and a baseball bat. Investigators say McGrayan helped funnel stolen money into luxury purchases and overseas transfers, making it harder to trace. The suspects were taken to a secure processing centre after the raids. Agents seized $20,000 in cash, money-counting machines, cell phones, laptops, and 2 loaded 9mm handguns with boxes of ammunition. This marks the second week in a row that Homeland Security has carried out early morning raids in Los Angeles, targeting transnational crime networks. The suspects now face charges including conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering.
A bribery case involving Armenia's former president Serge Sargsyan has officially been sent to court. Sargsyan is accused of accepting a bribe of around $3 million in 2008 when he served as the defense minister. The case will be heard by the country's anti-corruption court. Sargsyan, who led Armenia for 10 years, has dismissed the charges as politically motivated, calling the case a legal conjuring. As Armenia and Azerbaijan edge closer to peace, A News asked people in Yerevan, Tbilisi, and Baku, how will peace between the two nations affect the region? In part 2 of our special report, citizens share their views on trade, trust, and the road ahead.
Across Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, citizens are weighing the potential ripple effects of peace. Could it open doors to economic growth or bring new challenges?
If Zangezur region is opened by Armenia, there will be many trade roads that will link Silk Road, one of the Central Asia, China, through Azerbaijan to Turkey and Europe, and both countries will benefit Armenia and Azerbaijan.
I think it could bring more travel, job, and trade opportunities around South Caucasus. Also, this peace could make region more stable, attracting new investments and opening doors for new relationships.
From corridors to cooperation, many see peace as the key to unlocking regional development.
Մենք պետք է շփվենք, որ զարգանան։ Կարևոր որ սա հանրապետությունները պետք է զարգանան։ Իմ կարծիքով շփումը շատ մեծ նշանակություն ունի, թշնամություն պետք չէ լինի։
But others warn the political legacy of conflict still casts a long shadow.
Շատ վատ է անդրադառնում, շատ վատ է անդրադառնում։ Մեծ խաղացողներն են ներգրավված, ոչ մի հեռանկար չի տալիս տարածաշրջանին բնականon հանգիստ ընթացք ունենալու։
I think it will affect Georgia not in a good way, because most of the traffic of the goods and everything for now was passing through the Georgia because of this conflict, and now it means that we will be no more needed.
Generational change may be the key to breaking the cycle.
So I think maybe not our generation, but the next generation will be free of these prejudices and their thoughts. And I would love to feel free everywhere where I go. So that's why hopefully the future will be bright for everyone.
Война это плохая вещь. Շատ վատ բան է, շատ. Ոչ մի սովորական ադրբեջանցի, ոչ մի սովորական հայ չի ուզում պատերազմ.
Even with disagreements, some things unite both sides. A desire for normalcy, stability, and a more hopeful future.
I think only positive, because peace is always making a good and positive impact on not only both sides, but also in whole region. That's my point of view.
Իհարկե վադա, պետք է խաղաղություն անպայման, լարվածություն պետք չի ոչ մեկի։
Հարավային Կովկասում լարվածու պետք չէ երբևիցե։
From Tbilisi to Baku and back to Yerevan, one message is clear. The region's fate rests not only in treaties, but in trust, trade, and the shared will for change.
You can watch the full special report in our program on Saturday. Now to Iran. Austria's intelligence service released a report claiming that Tehran is continuing its active nuclear weapons program. Iran has slammed the report as false and baseless, demanding an explanation from Vienna. Turash Iralilu brings more.
Iran has condemned a report by the Austrian intelligence agency on its nuclear program and demanded Vienna's explanation about the report, which Tehran called false and baseless. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai on Friday refuted the report, which claims Tehran is pursuing a military nuclear program, and has demanded the Austrian government an official explanation regarding the irresponsible, provocative, and destructive report. Referring to Iran's membership in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty NPT, and the fact that Iran's nuclear sites are subject to the strictest inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, he said the report lacks credibility and is also discrediting the UN Nuclear Agency's verification regime. The report, which alleges Iran is advancing its nuclear weapons capability to be used in its ballistic missile program, contradicts the U.S. intelligence community assessment in March that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. The Austrian intelligence was released as the Iranian and U.S. negotiators have held 5 rounds of talks since April, mediated by the Omani Foreign Ministry. In a message on his X account, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi rejected as false the news quoting Austria's intelligence report on military direction of Tehran's nuclear program. Araghchi also cast doubt on media speculation about an imminent deal between Iran and the US and wrote, "I'm not sure we are actually at such a juncture." Despite of serious differences over removal of the US sanctions against Iran and halting Tehran's uranium enrichment program, both sides have so far termed their discussions as constructive. Turash Iralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Astana is hosting the first ever Central Asia-Italy summit at the Palace of Independence. The presidents of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan are meeting with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to explore deeper cooperation. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev called the summit a sign of Central Asia's growing geopolitical importance. Key areas on the agenda include trade, energy, transport, education, and environmental issues. Uzbekistan and Italy have signed a joint declaration on strategic partnership following a meeting of Uzbekistani President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Samarkand. The two sides also signed deals on labor migration, critical raw materials cooperation, and academic partnerships.
During high-level discussions held in Samarkand, the President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni adopted a joint declaration that formally established a strategic partnership between the two countries. A formal ceremony was held in the presence of both leaders, where a series of newly signed bilateral agreements were exchanged. These accords span a wide range of areas, including the promotion and mutual protection of investments, cooperation in the field of critical raw materials, and joint efforts on migration and mobility. The country is also committed to a deeper partnership in sustainable development, environmental protection, and the preservation of cultural heritage. Notable agreements were signed to enhance collaboration with the Italian Climate Fund and the Italian Confederation of Agriculture. Key green development initiatives were also launched in partnership with prominent Italian companies, including Sogesid and Ansalado. These efforts are expected to contribute to both nations' long-term environmental and industrial goals. Beyond governmental cooperation, the visit featured the execution of a number of significant partnership instruments. This includes collaborative frameworks with the National Research Center of Italy, strategic industrial alliances with companies such as Siemens and Danieli, and an academic memorandum of understanding with the University of Perugia. Together, these extensive agreements underscore a shared commitment to strengthening bilateral ties across economic, environmental, academic, and technological domains. Recent data also highlights the success of ongoing economic collaboration. Bilateral trade between Uzbekistan and Italy has nearly tripled in recent years, propelled by a broader scope of commerce and strengthened economic ties.
An Afghan acting minister visited Kazakhstan and met with the country's president to talk on trade and regional issues. Our Tamim Bahis has more on that in Kabul.
Afghanistan and Kazakhstan are stepping up efforts to deepen their economic and political ties. During an official visit to Astana, Afghanistan's acting Minister of Industry and Commerce Nuruddin Azizi met with Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev to discuss a broad range of regional and bilateral issues. In a high-level meeting, President Tokayev emphasized his country's proposal to establish a United Nations office in Kazakhstan. The office would serve Central Asian countries and focus in particular on Afghanistan-related matters, a move Tokayev described as a key regional initiative. Trade was also high on the agenda. Both sides expressed their ambition to boost bilateral trade to over $3 billion. Minister Azizi welcomed Kazakhstan's continued economic engagement, including a significant $500 million investment in the Turgundi railway project, an infrastructure link seen as vital for regional connectivity. As part of growing diplomatic momentum, it was agreed that Kazakhstan's foreign minister will visit Kabul in the near future. Officials say the visit will aim to reinforce political dialogue and economic cooperation between the two countries. This visit marks a notable step in Kazakhstan's expanding role in regional diplomacy and infrastructure development, especially at a time when Afghanistan is seeking to strengthen its international ties amid ongoing challenges. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you very much for watching and do stay tuned to A News.